This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network. Wow, I can breathe. It's been a long journey to build this and get this off the ground. A lot of late nights, and to see the response just a weekend has been pretty special. We flew through all of my early projections and hopes for launch, and expectations for this place. I do believe we have built something super special, and that is going to be something that you just need to have if you are serious about betting and DFS. The Discord channel, the articles, the premium shows, the insider sheets, the cumulative use and breakdown of data from Steve and I, our football chat. Like, that's why I would sign up now, because you get all of our team's football stuff going into the NFL playoffs. And our football chat is pretty much just as active as our golf chat. Our guy Kyle won a showdown contest last night. Took us about 5 days to see that ISN logo at the top of a DraftKings contest. First of many, I can assure you that. So InsideSportsNetwork.com, pride ourselves on our information, which is always going to be number one for us, as always. Have the best information and figure it out from there. Community, Discord, and it's an awesome little family we got over there. I'm super proud of it, and we'd love to have you as part of the squad. Also, DM me if you are like a younger guy or a student. We do a student discount. I get a lot of DMs from like college kids about how to break into the gambling and advanced analytics space. I think we're still pretty early. And if you understand how to model, and if you understand how to use Excel, and if you understand how to use advanced analytics for not just golf, but any sport, I think there's a lot of real careers in there. And personally, I think a much safer route to go down in terms of, because I think everybody wants to talk about sports for a living, right? That's what I certainly wanted to do when I was in high school and college. And I know that that is a dream path for many others. I would always advise you to get really good at understanding data. That's how I did it. And that's how I think there will be opportunities for many, many more people like me over the next 5 to 10 years as gambling just continues to grow. And there will always be a need for good information, right? So I know all of these legal sports books are pushing advertising everywhere. The types of bets that you don't want to make, your same game parlays, hiring all of these people that are giving out bad gambling advice to promote their sports books. I think in turn, when enough people, and I know this is why a bunch of subscribers joined Inside Sports Network and found my work, there comes a time where you get tired of getting bad gambling advice and you get tired of losing. And again, I feel pretty passionately that there's always going to be a route for people in this industry if you can get phenomenal at understanding data and communicating that effectively too, right? There are a lot of smart guys that are really good at understanding data, but not good at communicating that, not good at breaking it down cohesively and in a digestible fashion on podcasts. And again, I think getting inundated with that Discord and starting to have conversations with other sharp gamblers. That's the thing I love about the Discord. Like, our team is very far from the only sharp people in there. Like, it is not just us telling people what to play and people tailing it. It's real conversation. I tail college football picks in there all the time. I run my NFL plays by people all the time. I love talking to people about decisions that I have to make in DFS and get advice from my subscribers all the time because they're all really smart as well. And so again, I feel pretty passionately about helping like younger guys that are trying to get into this and helping those people and doing what I can to get their foot in the door and be a part of a community where they could really learn from other smart people, be engaged in discourse about data and golf and challenge their own beliefs and run stuff by other people. So yeah, if you're in college or even graduate school and are super into gambling or golf or advanced analytics, just DM me and we will always work something out. I want to get those guys in there for basically free or quite cheap. So all right, Sentry. I am going to spend the vast majority, well, the Monday show with Bear Off, I think we'll do a little bit more recap because I'm recording this on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time in Los Angeles. I apologize for not recording this last night, by the way. Often I like to get these Sunday morning podcasts recorded on Saturday evening. And so they can be out like first thing in the morning on Sunday mornings. This is going to come out still pretty much around the same time the players at the bottom of the field of the Sentry are teeing off, and you'll have all Sunday to listen to it. But generally, I like to record these on Saturday night and get them off a little bit early for you. So, we never on this podcast will we have the completed results from the prior tournament. But through 3 rounds at the Sentry, it is what we thought it was, right? I was never buying any of that soft golf course stuff. We have 25 years of data on this golf course. It played a little bit softer in round 1, but it was incredibly apparent based on the weather forecast that as the tournament progressed, the place is going to dry itself out and you're going to start to see those 350, 400-yard drives again. And the Sentry is what we thought it was, right? It is a completely defenseless golf course in the absence of wind. And I understand the argument that, hey, forget about the scores, forget about the par. Par is a social construct. I agree with a little bit of that in theory, but I think we have broken contain on this golf course, and this is nothing new. This is what I think a lot of us have been saying for a couple of years now, where it's like, hey, we get it. It's really fun to be transported to Hawaii. It's really fun if you're on the East Coast in December or the beginning of January, and you get to see those beautiful wide open ocean vistas on your television screen and feel like you're transported to a place that seems a lot more palatable to hang. It's just a good hang, right? It's a good hang. Why does Adam Sandler continuously go to tropical locations to make ridiculous Netflix comedy movies? Because it's just a good hang to throw it on your screen. And I love Bill Corr and Ben Crenshaw as designers. One of the things that I talked about on last week's podcast, however, is that Bill Corr and Ben Crenshaw are phenomenal designers. If you're an amateur golfer and love great architecture, they are not designers that are going to create golf courses that test the modern professional, because that's just not their design philosophy. That's not what they're into. What they like to do is create incredibly wide fairways, give players shot options, give players alternative routes of play. And the problem with designing those golf courses for professional golfers is that they're all going to find the optimal place to hit it and take advantage of it. And that risk reward matrix, that decision matrix that becomes difficult for an amateur golfer when you're playing a Bill Corr, Ben Crenshaw golf course, is just not there for a professional golfer, because they're going to optimize the strategy of that golf hole. And what is a risk reward hole for amateurs is no risk and all the reward. And I think that continues to be the problem with Kapalua, is that I don't have a tremendous amount of issue with low scores from time to time. It's the fact that there's no downside risk. It's that there's no opportunity to go backwards. And so it's really not a great chasing golf course. I mean, that's what I think people talk about when they think birdie-fest, is like, oh, we love golf courses where somebody can come from 4, 5, 6 strokes back on this golf course to go win the tournament. But you actually can't really do that at Kapalua, or I suppose that you can. It's just very hard because what makes a great chasing golf course is, yes, like TPC Sawgrass is a great chasing golf course. Okay. And the reason why TPC Sawgrass is a great chasing golf course is because, yes, TPC Sawgrass has a lot of birdie holes. You can shoot 64, 65 at TPC Sawgrass, but it also has the opportunity for players to go backwards, right? And there's no opportunity to go backwards at Kapalua. Like watching Colin Morikawa and Hideki Matsuyama play yesterday, and hat tip to them, they played phenomenal golf. I am not just saying that their play has been a product of an easy golf course. Their control over their golf ball right now is pretty unparalleled and pretty fun to watch. But every single hole, it's just like, okay, worst case scenario, it's a tap in par. And, I really think of the only, just watch it, because I've watched a lot of this tournament over the last couple of days. I mean, Wyndham Clark making double bogey on the 14th hole, a drivable par 4, because he hit a 50-yard slice out of bounds. I mean, that's really like what feels like the only downside risk. Yeah, you kind of can make some bogeys on this golf course. Don't get me wrong. Core play, Cameron Davis started out 4 over through 3. And we were all going nuts in the Discord. And then he proceeded to make 22 birdies over his next 39 holes and is now sitting in the top 10. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this afternoon to watch some golf. I am heavily rooting for Colin Morikawa, as I played 50% Colin Morikawa in daily fantasy and have 0 Hideki Matsuyama whatsoever. But I'm not sure. And I have guys at 18 and 19 under, your Greisermans and your Adam Scotts. Sung JM was my one and done. Thomas Dietrich is in my best daily fantasy lineup. We freaking nailed the bottom of the board this week, and I have no idea if I'm going to win any money. I mean, Dietrich, Tom Hoagie, Cam Davis, Adam Scott, Seb Straka, Maverick McNeely. We played every single one of those guys. I have 7 out of 19 players in my player pool in the top 10, including 50% Colin Morikawa, and I have no idea if I'm going to win a thing this week. Xander was a real mistake, right? I played a lot of Xander. I played 70% Xander. So my best lineups are actually the 30% of my lineups that are Cantlay Morikawa lineups. Cantlay's played amazing over the last 2 days, but you shoot +1 on this golf course and you're just going to be playing catch up for the rest of the tournament. So really happy. I know it's been a great week in the Discord. I know not just do many Discord members have Morikawa outright, but we nailed the bottom of the board. It's just really hard to win with these no cut events, where I still think there will be a lot of leaderboard gravity on Sunday. So we'll see how that shakes out. Head, wallet, and heart play that is realistic is probably going to be Colin. I'm certainly rooting for Colin to win this event over Hideki. But we will do a much more thorough recap of the Sentry on the Monday DFS show with Barif. Let's dive right into the Sony Open. Okay. A full field event. Let's go. I have had a lot of success at the Sony Open over the years. The last 3 years, in 2021, or this would be 2022. I apologize. I won the now gone. That was one of my favorite DraftKings contests back in the day. The 3 max $15 entry, the Pat Mayo Experience Open. I used to clean up in that one. 3 years ago for the Sony, I won it. Shout out Hideki, Russell Henley, Seamus Power, Adam Svensson, all in the same lineup. I remember specifically that week I had Henley outright, And Hideki was my anchor in DFS, and he was low owned that week because he had just played poorly at the Sentry, I believe. And there was another player that was mega chalk at the top of the board next to Hideki. And I remember he bombed out, and Hideki at half the ownership ended up being the nuts. And I remember, because I was still in my early DFS days at the beginning of 2022. And I remember saying to myself, yeah, this leverage thing, they're not crazy talking about it. This game theory thing, this Hideki Matsuyama, is he really 50% likely to outperform the guy that's double the ownership of him? This was the first week where the contrarian strategy really worked for me. And there, Hideki wasn't the only low owned guy in that lineup. Like I said, I know Seamus Power and Adam Svensson were really important key pieces for me that week, because I also finished second in the $33 single entry. That was still one of my best ROI weeks I've ever had in DFS. I turned $75 into a little under $8,000. So then the following year, I hit Siwoo Kim 60-1. And then last year, I had Keegan Bradley outright, Benny on in one and done in DFS, and walked away with the worst possible outcome. I can't even remember if I hedged that week onto Grayson. But I feel incredibly comfortable with my breakdown of this golf course. I'm not sure that it has anything to do with the fact that it was designed by my favorite architect, Seth Rayner, but I always look forward to this week. Hopefully we can keep the momentum going here in Maui. So Grayson Murray last year, 17 under par in a playoff over Keegan and Benny on, 400-1. Grayson Murray. And one of the things I'll talk about as well, this is something we were talking about in the Discord yesterday. I was talking about with Brian as well. And he laid out, he has a tweet from last year. And so you can add Grayson Murray to this. When you add Grayson to this, 8 of the last 11 winners have played the Sentry the week before. Okay. But 2 of the last 3 did not play the Sentry the week before. So Grayson Murray did not play the Sentry. Siwoo Kim did not play the Sentry. But if you date back to, the last decade before that, a lot of guys you want playing the Sentry. Now I am 100% going to bet players this week that did not play the Sentry. I'm probably going to deploy players that played the Sentry but did not look great at the Sentry. So I thought that this was a much stronger trend than it actually was, but I wouldn't get super hung up on that, given the fact that the last 2 winners in Siwoo Kim and Grayson Murray both did not play the Sentry. I think it is a bonus if you did play the Sentry, particularly a bonus if you played well at the Sentry. Getting those warm-up reps is really important. I mean, you saw it this week at Kapalua. Like, how many guys Cantlay, Cam Davis were both great examples of this. Is like, Cantlay just needed that one competitive warm-up round, and the second he got that out of his system, he started playing golf again. So, if the difference between somebody playing Kapalua and not playing Kapalua is that they have a bad round one at the Sony, that could be the difference between not only just winning the golf tournament, but, making the cut, missing the cut. So I think it's a feather in your cap if you've played Sentry, but I don't think it's the end of the world if you haven't. We are traveling to Waialae Country Club in Honolulu, Hawaii. Have never been here. Again, I spent a lot of time at the Big Island in Hawaii, but I'm really interested and looking forward to hopefully checking this place out. And yeah, I try and see every Seth Rayner golf course. Again, he is my favorite architect, and Tom Doak restoration in 2017, one of the great restorative architects and modern architects. I've been diving into a ton of Doak literature over the last couple of weeks. I love his writing on golf courses almost as much as I love the golf courses that he restores and designs. So this has phenomenal bones. Par 70, 7,044 yards, Bermuda grass from head to toe. It's a wonderfully nostalgic golden age design. It's not a good piece of property. This is not thought of as anywhere near close to one of Seth Raynor's masterpieces. That's generally because of the golf course conditions. That's generally because of the property. He did a phenomenal job routing the golf course. Like, the piece of property in itself is kind of routed like Chicago Golf Club. It's just kind of a square, and holes kind of go around, back in and over. It never feels like you're playing two holes that are completely going in the same direction. It's a really creative piece of routing. The issue is that advances, and this is the case with many golden age golf courses, advances in modern technology have really compromised the shot values here. So, Tom Doak was brought in a few years ago for a restoration, which ultimately had very little impact on how the golf course plays for professionals. I think that wind, just like Kapalua, wind is really what you need. Under tranquil conditions, Waialae is one of the 10 shortest and easiest golf courses on tour. However, I don't think we're going to get tranquil conditions this week, which I'll talk about in a second. But the past 2 years, we have seen a little bit more wind, and it has played as the 15th easiest golf course on tour, as opposed to the 5th easiest golf course on tour in 2022 and 2021. And in 2020, however, and I actually think this might be the year that we want to look at. 2020, we saw an insane amount of wind, and it played as the 8th toughest course on tour. Now, looking at the early forecasts, we are looking at potentially conditions close to what we saw in 2020. We are looking at consistent wind speeds in the 20 mile per hour zone. Now, it's still early, and I will update my thoughts on the weather in all of my content throughout the week, and mainly the Discord channel. So especially on these weather weeks, this is a great week to hop in the Discord channel, because a lot of what I say on my Sunday and Monday shows are not going to end up being remotely how I feel about this golf course by the time of the premium 8 p.m. show for the insiders and the subscribers. Looking at it now, though, on Sunday morning, I'm dubious to suggest that this is going to play as one of the 10 toughest courses on tour again, but I do feel comfortable suggesting that this event is going to be won in the 15 under zone, as opposed to the 17 to 23 under zone of years past. So how does the wind affect our breakdown? Based on the current forecast, and again, I'll rerun my model after the Sentry on Monday or Tuesday, I have decreased my normal emphasis on putting in exchange for a higher weight on driving and short game than I typically have at Waialae. I think more difficult scoring conditions are going to yield a lower greens and regulation percentage and place more pressure on a player's tee to green skill, which is somewhat mitigating their ability to separate on the greens. So I think that this is going to be more of a ball striker's test than years past. In the past, under calm conditions, I would tell you that Waialae teeters the edge of a putting contest. Okay. Way more strengths in terms of winners, top 5, top 10 finishers have gained strokes. Their percentage has been higher towards strokes putting as opposed to the other 3 stack categories. On a true ball striking course, you're often going to see approach, make up a larger percentage of the pie than putting, and Waialae is clearly putting is still number one, although approach is close and has a much lower greens in regulation percentage than Kapalua. But I think that this is going to be a lot more about driving and short game this year than I would normally have. Now, I still have driving and short game as like nothing more than an average PGA Tour course, but under tranquil conditions, I would be like comp courses, Harbor Town, Sedgefield, Colonial, Port Royal, middle iron play, middle iron play, middle iron play, and putting from 5 to 15 feet. Okay. And this week, it's more about I'm looking for a balanced attack. I'm looking at, some of those shorter positional golf courses that had some of the tougher scoring years. Sedgefield, when it's firm and fast, gets one at 15 to 17 under. Colonial is really the good one because Colonial is very similar to this golf course off the tee as well. I think this golf course, Waialae, and I'm going to get out ahead of this because, how many times take a shot for the amount of times in content this week you're going to hear short and positional. This golf course has been a little bit mismarketed as a short and positional golf course, or at least in the last 3 to 5 years, I think you're seeing a lot more drivers at this golf course, which is, Colonial is very similar as well. Driver usage is pretty much now teetering up to 65%. Waialae is a great example of a golf course that we used to think of this short, positional, less than driver golf course, but advances in modern technology and advanced analytics have allowed players to realize that a more aggressive strategy is actually optimal. Now, the one thing to watch in 2020, when we got a tremendous amount of wind, players were clubbing down more to try and find the fairways. Okay. So that's the fun part this week is the golf course gets more strategic and challenging when the wind blows. And I actually think like being able to control your golf ball off the tee, whatever club you're hitting this week, is going to be an important skill. This is the highest weight I've had on off the tee. This is one of those golf courses where a lot of people have asked me, like, do you just copy and paste your breakdown from last year? I don't even look at it. I try, and I know it would save me a ton of time if I just and I kind of look at it after, I should say, to see if there's anything big that I miss or compare and contrast how I'm viewing a golf course now than a golf course in the past, just to see if there was anything that I forgot or missed. But I love trying to approach every week without any bias and trying to approach it with a completely open mind. So, I did my breakdown of Waialae this year. And then I looked at my breakdown of Waialae last year, and maybe I'm being silly here because this is like one of my most successful golf courses on the PGA Tour. So why would I try and change my breakdown at all? But I've increased off the tee, increased short game, decreased putting and approach play a little bit to make this more of a balanced model, a balanced test. I don't, I think about a golf course like TPC Sawgrass or Sedgefield or even Harbor Town, and it's like driving accuracy, middle iron play, or middle iron play, putting, driving accuracy, putting. And Waialae used to be middle iron play, putting, and now I think it is still a lot of middle iron play and putting, but I really think like a well-rounded skill set is optimal here, and that you actually can separate here via elite driving. Like last year, there was kind of a near correlation between distance and accuracy. So again, I'm not buying that this is a golf course where it's more important to be straight than it is long. I would argue that Waialae, and as opposed to being super, super elite at one of those, you want to be above average at both. That's how Grayson got it done. Grayson ranked second in the field in off the tee last year. He was top 25 in both distance and accuracy. Benyon also lost in a playoff, leading the field in off the tee and driving distance. So I actually think that you can gain a bit of an edge here with elite driving. I mean, you at least saw Grayson Murray and Benyon do that. And I'm looking for guys that are great total drivers of the golf ball, have significant control over their ball in the wind. And just super, super, super well-rounded players, right? In terms of the actual layout, it's a standard par 70, 4 par 3s, 12 par 4s, 2 par 5s. The par 5s rank as the easiest set of 3-shotters on the PGA Tour. They yield a ridiculous birdie or better percentage of 64.6 compared to the tour average of 45.2. So, it's really the par 3s that provide the most pushback, and this is where the emphasis on middle iron play comes in. Of the 12 par 4s, 9 out of the 12 play under 460 yards. The only true long par 4s are the first and the 13th, which play as the two toughest holes on the golf course. The fact that 9 par 4s measure between 350 and 460 yards also explains why this event is, nearly always won by the player who presents that best combination of short to middle iron play and putting inside 15 feet. I just think the only difference in terms of our breakdown this year is that you can decrease the putting emphasis just a little bit in the wind and focus a little bit more on how guys are going to get it to the green as opposed to what they do on the green. When on golf courses where it's more difficult to get it to the green, you want to focus on tee to green. On golf courses where it's a little bit easier to get the ball on the green, you want to focus on how they separate from a score perspective, which is putting. And I think Waialae has kind of teetered the edge of a little bit more putting than tee to green in the past. And I think with the extra win this year, that flips back a little bit more in the favor of overall tee to green skill. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the golf course at large. Let's take a quick break and then we will break down the model. All right, we are back. So the top 20 in my model, and my model is up right now for you to check out on betspertsgolf.com. Code Inside Golf. By the way, the new course pages have been updated for the rabbit hole, and let me tell you, they are phenomenal. Steve, our host of the Hold the Green podcast on the Inside Sports Network, he's never historically been a model guy, and he finally started using the rabbit hole, and he breaks down his model in the Hold the Green podcast. And I love the way that he models. Like I find it incredibly interesting to compare and contrast what I'm doing and the things that I'm looking at versus the things that he's looking at. If you think my models are crazy and ridiculous with 20 inputs, then you should see Steve's. But again, that's why I hired him, because he's the only person I know that is crazier than I and more detail oriented than I when it comes to breaking down golf courses. So you can now see Steve as one of the experts on the rabbit hole as well, and compare and contrast his model to my model, build your own models. I think the thing that I love about the rabbit hole as well is they care, right? A lot of these data sites, and trust me, I know because I tried for many years, I would send them emails like, hey, this filter's wrong. Like, you have golf courses that should not be in this filter, and you're leading people astray. And they just wouldn't respond or not do anything about it. So I think just right off the bat, if you're using the rabbit hole, you have a huge edge over people that are modeling on different sites. And again, what I love about it is, like, all of our members and subscribers have a direct line to the BetSperts guys if we want them to add anything. Like all of the BetSperts guys, Ron, Ryan, Andy, they're all in our Discord. So, anytime in our Discord, you just want to say, hey, it'd be really cool if the rabbit hole added this, we'll just add it. And the difference is it actually gets done. So, I mean, there's a reason why I partnered with them. There's a reason why I chose them as the official data partner for Inside Sports Network. Like if you're not modeling with the rabbit hole, it's just a very serious red flag at this point in terms of your touting and modeling. So Inside Golf gets you a whopping 25% discount over at the rabbit hole. Okay, number one in my model, Russell Henley. Shocker, right? I mean, Henley was what, minus 9,000 to be the number one in a Sony model. Perfect golf course for him. I've bet him and had him at this golf course the year that he lost in a playoff to Hideki. I can't remember whether or not I had him last year. I think I went all in on Corey Connors last year, who ended up finishing 12th. I can't remember if I ended up betting Russell Henley, but point being is he probably has the highest likelihood in this field to be involved. But at the end of the day, it's Russell Henley. So a decision will need to be made I don't think that Russell Henley will be the favorite, particularly if Hideki, no matter what happens with Hideki today as a former champion of the Sony, and presumably he doesn't withdraw, which I know that Hideki is always on big time WD alert, but Sony, Japanese company, I believe. I mean, he's played this golf course 11 times. Like he always plays this event. So I think it's always a risk if he ends up winning the Sentry. But Hideki, I would imagine, regardless of what happens today, is going to be the favorite. And then you're going to get Tom Kim, Sahith, Russell Henley, Corey Connors. It's a good field, Luke Clanton. It's a really good field. So Henley, number one. Number two, Ben Griffin, which I think in many ways is like the B- version of Russell Henley and has the opportunity to be Russell Henley over the next couple of years in terms of the golf courses that Ben Griffin plays well at. I was on him a ton this fall, and I may be on him once again this week as well. I mean, he is a great short to middle iron player. He is a phenomenal putter. I will say that I probably like him a little bit less in these conditions than I would have a regular Sony Open. Like, I think Ben Griffin is a really, really elite Bermuda putter, and he's a really good iron player. He's not good off the tee, but he has a phenomenal short game. Maybe the reason I end up holding off on Griffin this week is because I think we're going to get a little bit harder of a Sony Open in years past. And I would just give him more of a slight preference if this was still more of closer to a putting contest. Number three, and I think if you ask me right now, I'm going to have a much clearer and cohesive thoughts on who I'm going to bet and play at the Sony Open after we get the final results and numbers for the Sentry. So I'm not going to give you anything more than leans and talking about players that haven't played the Sentry until the Sentry is wrapped up. But Corey Connors was my pick to win this event last year. I might double down. Connors has been phenomenal at this golf course. He's got 4 top 12 finishes in his last 6 starts here. I like him more in tougher conditions. I like him more on golf courses where you need to control your ball off the tee and hit a million middle irons, and there's not as much of a reliance on the putter. I think the windier conditions and the potential that this could be won at 13 to 16 under par as opposed to 17 to 23 under par, I think that plays even further into Connor's hat. So just right now, depending on how things shake out with the final tallies at the Sentry, I think Corey Connors might be my pick to win this year again. Number 4, Eric Cole. What do you know? Just another model darling who is underperforming at the Sentry. Faded him in DFS, still bet Eric Cole at 90 to 1. That was a bet wasted. We'll see if his performance at the Sentry drop him in the model just a little bit. But again, it's another golf course where should be a good fit. Again, I think less of him, just like I do with Ben Griffin, if it's going to be a little bit harder. Whereas guys like Ben Griffin and Eric Cole, I think a little bit higher of uh, in golf courses where it tends to be a little bit more emphasis on putting as opposed to tee to green skill. Number 5, Brian Harmon, who's been a bit of a disaster this week at the Sentry. So we'll see there. 6, Hideki Matsuyama. No surprises there. I would again expect him to be the tournament favorite. 7, Seamus Power. Another one of my guys. This model is just completely full of Andy Lack Discord, Fall Swing Discord All-Stars, with Seamus Power being another one of those guys that just was racking up top 25s over the Fall Swing, but we came up over in the outright market. And then you get into 8, Luke Clanton, which I think is a really interesting one to talk about, right? So Luke Clinton, the you know the hype is warranted, okay, and sometimes have no problem being a little bit later on players, but I talked about this guy in my season preview podcast with Joseph Amanya. I talked about him earlier in a mailbag episode. I talked about him in the majors preview with Steve. Like, he's a real deal. Okay, I'm very bullish on Luke Clanton. Now, he has 2 things working against him at this golf course and one major thing working for him. The 2 things working against him, number 1, he didn't play the Sentry. So if you're of the belief that maybe he needs a warm-up round or 2 to get going, he does not have that going for him in the same way that Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Eric Cole, Brian Harmon, Hideki, Eckroat, Horschel, Keegan, Chris Kirk, Benny On, JT Poston, all these guys competing with Luke Clanton at the top of my model have that benefit of getting a warm-up round at the Sentry. And the other thing about Sony is, and this is something I should have mentioned when I was talking more macro about the golf course, it's one of the top 8 golf courses in course history. Okay, so you don't often see a lot of debutants winning this golf tournament. Last year, the only debut player that finished top 10 was Matthew Pavone. Probably should have paid more attention to that because he ended up winning at Torrey Pines as a debutant a couple weeks later, which is another golf course that you don't see debutantes doing too great at. But it's typically a golf course that you want some experience. Now, whether that's the complexities of Rayner's greens or just the fact that it's the first event of the season, and some guys have become really comfortable at this golf course over the years, and some guys prepare in the off season better than others, right? So is the fact that course history is very sticky at Waialae a product of Waialae being this incredibly nuanced and difficult to figure out golf course, or is it a product of the same players just seem to be view their offseason with more rigor and intensity than others, right? So the guys that really grind in December over the offseason, whether it's at Waialae or Torrey Pines, those guys are always going to play better in their first event versus the guys that took a little bit more of a break over the offseason are going to need a couple tournaments to get eased into it. But for whatever reason it's probably a combination of both. Waialae has really sticky course history, and Luke Clanton has never seen the golf course before this. Now, the counter argument to that is, I could see this being a very similar situation to what we saw out of Ludwig at the RSM Classic last year, or I would suppose it'd be technically 2 years ago. I knew that Ludwig was the real deal because I did not think that the RSM Classic was a great golf course for him. The RSM Classic is pretty similar to Waialae in a lot of ways, really just about middle iron play. And RSM Classic, even more so than Waialae this year, does not really accentuate elite total driving. And again, I guess that brings us full circle to why I am a lot more pro Clanton here than I would have been in prior years, is that I think that the increase of this being more of a driver heavy golf course, the increase of even if it gets super windy and players have to focus a little bit more on clubbing down off the tee and finding the fairway, Clanton is a phenomenal total driver of the golf ball. Like if you want the early statistical comparison for Luke Clanton, it's Victor Hovland. Okay. And the good version of Victor Hovland, Clanton does not have a good short game. So maybe again, that's the other counter argument for why you would be worried a little bit about Clanton in tougher conditions, is that he has not shown his ability to consistently gain strokes around the green yet on the PGA Tour, but he has shown top 5 in the world upside off the tee and on approach. And he's a pretty decent putter too. So again, if you think these are going to be tougher conditions and more of an emphasis on tee to green play, and again, I think the thing with Clanton is, keep in mind, he almost won the RSM Classic and he almost won at Sedgefield. Okay. Now, those are two golf courses that under normal conditions are similar to Waialae and aren't typically the golf courses that I would think a guy like Luke Clanton or Victor Hovland would be awesome at, right? I think that down the road, Luke Clanton is going to have his biggest advantage at golf courses like Bay Hill and Muirfield Village. I mean, that's how great of a total driver of the golf ball he is. Those golf courses that emphasize middle to long iron play and total driving. That's the same thing with Ludwig too, right? But didn't stop him from blowing his load early at the RSM Classic, right? You know, when they're good, they're course proof. And Sony is enough of a good fit for Luke Clanton that if he's good, he's just going to win. He's not going to wait for it. So under consideration for me, under real consideration for me. And the other guy that I would mention as well that I think you can get a little bit better of a number on than Clanton, really like Thor too. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce Thorbjornsson because I'll get it wrong. But I think this guy's a real deal too, and he's not getting as much hype or as respect as Clanton in the betting market. But you want to talk about another guy that just casually, quietly finished top 10 at the RSM Classic, Thor. And same thing as Clanton. He didn't play the Sentry. He's never seen this golf course before. But I look at Thor as a guy that, I don't know, might be 80-1 this week. If he's 100-1, that is a tremendous buy. Who knows what the hype train will do? Maybe he opens 50, maybe he opens 100. I'm really not sure how they price Thor and how they figured out how to price for. I'll tell you right now, if he's anything over 80, I'm probably going to bet it or at least have very significant interest. He has a better short game than Clanton. They're pretty similar putters under a limited sample size. He's not the driver that Clanton is, but he has a much better short game than Clanton. And Clanton's a little bit of a better iron player. So Clanton should be priced higher than Thor right now. But like, for example, if Clanton opens 25 and Thor opens 80, bet Thor. Okay, finish up the model, and then I will give you one more guy that hasn't played the Sony that I'm pretty high on. So we get Clanton at 8, and then we go Ekro, Svensson. Svensson was a huge piece for me in that 2022 DraftKings team that won the Mayo Open. Billy Horschel, Keegan Bradley, Keith Mitchell, Chris Kirk, Benny On, Daniel Berger, Matt Kuchar, JT Poston, Ryo Hitsatsune, Tom Kim. Sony guys, right? A lot of Sony guys in there. And I actually think the players such as Benny On that are a little bit longer off the tee, even a guy like Taylor Pendrith, I wouldn't count them out just because they're not quote unquote short positional guys. Actually, Benny On, for what it's worth, you know, he's been phenomenal at the Wyndham as well, which is even more quote unquote shorter in a positional of a golf course than Waialae. So, you know, Svensson, Benny On, and the guy that I'm about to finish up on probably checks those boxes the most for me. But the one final guy that I wanted to mention that I would say I have pretty significant interest in the betting markets, despite the fact that he has not played Sentry, which is to me really the only real black mark against taking your chances on Daniel Berger this week, right? What's the downside on Berger? Okay, the market still isn't pricing him really up. I think you're going to be able to get definitely north of 50 to 1 on Berger right this week. And he hasn't played here in a couple of years because of the injury and everything, but he's got 3 top 15 finishes here already. He's really turned the driver on over the fall swing. He's starting to drive the ball straight. He's never going to be the longest guy in the field, but you don't need to be the longest guy in the field. You just need to be a good total driver of the golf ball, which Berger is. He's a phenomenal middle iron player. He's been great on shorter island golf courses, comp courses. He's won at Colonial before, which Colonial is so similar to this golf course strategically and from tee to green. The only difference is the agronomy, but particularly those windier, firmer years at Colonial. Berger's been awesome. Heritage, Sea Island. He got some competitive reps, at least in December at the Grant Thornton, and he finished off his fall swing, finishing second at the RSM Classic, gaining strokes in all 4 major categories. The only concern with Berger is the putter hasn't even really come back for him yet. But again, I think this year, under windier conditions, there's going to be a little bit less of an emphasis on putting than there would be in years past. So again, early leans for me, in terms of the guys that haven't played the Sentry, probably Thor and Berger. Okay. I like Ben Griffin too. I do. We'll see what those odds open at, but probably Thor and Berger, and maybe Clanton. I don't know if I'm going to bet Thor and Clanton, but I'm certainly looking at both of them. And then in terms of the guys that are playing the Sentry that I probably have the most interest in, I'll never discount Russell Henley, but I think in a vacuum, like if Henley and Connors are the same odds, I think I'd probably bet Connors. Although it's close. It's close. I really like Corey Connors this week. I think he's going to win a Sony Open. Okay. That's it for me. Again, InsideSportsNetwork.com. You can join the Discord. I'm already seeing the notifications roll in because players have started to tee off at the Sentry. It's a phenomenal place. It's a phenomenal community. What I love most about it, to reiterate, is that it's just like being part of a really fun group chat with everybody that also loves golf and are total degenerates and sickos. And you can get pretty much everything that you're looking for in there, right? If you're like one of those guys that likes to be like, Saul and just make ridiculous jokes and yell at golfers, we have that for you. If you are somebody that just wants to hop in there and ask me or Steve high-level questions about data, we have that for you. If you want to have informed conversations about golf courses, or if you want to have informed conversations about Sydney Sweeney, we have all of it for you. There is something for everyone in this community, and we hope you join the team. So InsideSportsNetwork.com. Enjoy the golf today. Enjoy the football today. And we will see you back on this YouTube channel. Subscribe, by the way. Want to get up to 1,000 subscribers. That's my goal for the next couple of weeks. But we will see you back here on this YouTube channel tomorrow. Cheers.